Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. It's so good to see all of you here on this beautiful day. The Jaybefaunt channel is available on all major podcast platforms, so go ahead and subscribe there. Also part of Revolutionary Blackout Network, so you can find me there on Sundays and Thursdays. If you have not already, go ahead and give a like to the stream. That pushes me out into the algorithm, and that helps me to be able to reach more people. So thank you so very much in advance. As well as, if you have not already, you guys can go to my Substack at jaybefaunt.substack.com. I write articles there. I also give notifications for clip uploads as well as whenever I go live. So you guys have that there as well. So thank you so very much. Also, in addition to and furthermore, I just want to say thank you to all the patrons on Patreon, Coffee, as well as anybody that sends me anything through PayPal. We'll get to that a little bit later, but I just want to say thank you so much to everybody in advance. Why are we here? Well, we're getting into it. We're finishing up this chapter 7 of Laziness Does Not Exist by Dr. Devon Price. I cannot wait to finish this up. This is going to be very deep and meaningful, especially for those of us who are in the activist space. So, a lot of what Dr. Devon Price has been talking about in chapter 7 about shrugging off society shoulds have been very deep, and it's been very helpful. Basically saying that you're not supposed to be perfect. Nobody is perfect. And a lot of times we'll try to strive for this perfection, whether it comes to the spaces that we have, whether it's with our bodies, whether it's, in our activism. There's so many different things that we're like, we have to be this paragon of perfection when it comes to whatever we do. And of course, we should strive to be the best version of ourselves, but we shouldn't burn ourselves out to do it. And that's one of the things that Dr. Devon Price has been really pushing for this particular chapter. And I really appreciate it. And it's been pretty cathartic for me. And so this one is really no different. The subheading for this one that we're going to be reading on page 196 is, "It is not your job to save the world." And this is going to be very interesting, especially when it comes to those of you who are trying to get into activism or organizing. I want you guys to listen more into this one. This one's for you. And so for those of us, especially those of us at RBN, who are focusing on these things, those of us, especially who are part of the RBN Orlando chapter and different chapters around the United States, this is going to be really meaningful for us. So I want you guys to really listen to this. So page 196, "It's not your job to save the world." Nearly every person I interviewed for this book mentioned feeling deeply anxious about the future of our world. Many said they feel guilty about not doing more to address the world's problems. Even people who have taken concrete steps to embrace the rest and do less in their lives, like Julie and Leo, mentioned feeling remorse that they weren't doing enough to fight climate change, racial injustice, the persecution of immigrants, and dozens of other problems. My friend Kim, whose experiences with homelessness I described in chapter 1, knows this feeling very well. In the years since being homeless, Kim has built a new life for themselves. They've gotten engaged, moved into a house in Wichita with their partner and daughter, and become a prominent activist. On Facebook, they run several online activist groups with combined membership of over 150,000 people. The groups inform followers about things like homelessness, economic inequality, climate change, and dozens of other topics close to Kim's heart. They pour hours into each week into keeping those groups active. In real life, Kim also does homeless outreach, giving people money and food and directing them to resources. Who does this sound like? Unfortunately, there has been another development in Kim's life in the past few years, one that threatens their ability to juggle these many responsibilities. After moving to Wichita, Kim developed Charcot-Marie tooth disease, a rare and painful neuromuscular condition. This disease is debilitating and it saps Kim's energy in massive ways. My husband does the lion's share of the housework because I'm fatigued by physical labor so quickly that it would never get done otherwise, Kim says. Sometimes I run a load of laundry or wash 4 dishes, but then I have to lay down to rest. Kim's disability puts major limits on how much work they can get done, both as a parent and as an activist. Running errands, going to doctor's appointments, picking up their daughter up from school, each takes a significant physical toll, and sometimes Kim doesn't have the strength to do any of it. Kim and their husband are constantly burned out. When things get especially busy, activism has to fall by the wayside. I understand this perfectly. As a kidney dialysis patient, I am constantly fatigued. A lot of people don't realize how exhausting it is. It's not just a mere tiredness like you feel after work. This is a worn out, exhausted feeling that sometimes you just don't want to get out of bed. You can't get out of bed. Those of us that suffer from different debilitating diseases, like, it could be diseases that are chronic, like myself. You could have autoimmune diseases that is out of your control. Different things, right? And you feel guilty because your body says no when your mind and heart wants to say yes. We have to fight against that. It's hard. It's definitely not easy. But we cannot continue to think that we have to be perfect in our activism. Your activism does not have to be perfect. You just have to be active. Let's continue. Last September, I compiled a list of about 24 climate-related reports and articles, dealing mostly with how climate change disproportionately harms people living in the global south, indigenous people, and disabled people, Kim says. I intended to create a big social media post for each of these reports and post them during the climate strike in September. Unfortunately, Kim wasn't able to make these posts in time. Life got in the way. I had to get the wedding invitations in the mail, and I felt guilty every minute I wasn't working on that, Kim says. Caleb and I got married over a year ago, and it's taken us this long to even plan an actual wedding. I had to finally get done. So the climate strike passed by without my ever getting around to those posts. There are optimal times and days to post certain stories if you want to elicit a response, and I feel terrible when I miss those dates. When I ask him what steps they take to manage their burnout or reduce their workload, they don't have much to offer. I don't know that I do anything to prevent burnout, they say. It's never not on the horizon. To some extent, having neuromuscular condition forces me to rest sometimes. Sometimes, instead of feeling guilty about what I'm not getting done, I just sleep all afternoon instead. This happens to me. And sometimes I feel guilty when I'm not able to post things like I would like to, or upload things, or do live streams like the way I really want to. That affects me too. Like sometimes you guys can see and notice like when I'm not 100%, but I really want to do the live stream. It's pretty apparent. So yeah, it's a lot, either with doing the activism work on the ground or even just doing this work in independent media. This is one of the reasons why I'm more fervent about getting a kidney transplant because I know that I will be feeling much more better so that I can do this work even better and the work on the ground better. Even though Kim clearly has tons of valid reasons to need a break from activism, they still feel guilty for not giving some more time and energy to it. Climate change is an urgent, pressing issue, a literal fire that needs to be put out. It's hard to set reasonable work-life boundaries when matters seem that dire. If you care deeply about a variety of social issues, it is easy to feel that you must sacrifice your own well-being in order to save the world. When I spoke to Kathy Libriola about this, she noted that this feeling of panicky urgency is nothing new. The thing that seems so striking to me is that at any given moment in the last 50 years, there are lots of people saying, "Oh my God, this is the most important issue ever in history, and we must sacrifice everything for this cause," she says. People said that same thing 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago about different issues. And then they got so burned out after the relatively short time that they just dropped out totally from doing anything. Look, how many people right now are talking about what's going on in Palestine? Is it a pressing issue? Absolutely. Many hands make the load light. When you take it all on yourself, you increase the risk of burnout. This is why it is important for organizations to grow so that we don't burn ourselves out. This is why it's important to take breaks, and do not feel guilty for that, because those breaks are there to re-energize and reinvigorate you so that you can keep the fight going. Are you listening? Activists, hey, you listening? As much as we might want to devote our lives to solving the political problems that keep us up at night, intense, panic-fueled activism is rarely sustainable. No individual has the power to actually save the world through sheer hard work. It is both ridiculous and destructive to set such high expectations for ourselves. Instead, if we want to fight injustice or work to improve the world, we ought to do so in a collaborative way that recognizes our unique strengths and needs. I'm going to read that again. If we want to fight injustice or work to improve the world, we ought to do so in a collaborative way that recognizes our unique strengths and needs. Do not let individualism affect your activism. The individualism will come in here and say, well, I have to do all this by myself, or I'm the only one, or I just got to do all this alone. No. You influence and you grow the people that are helping you. You delegate, or you vote for delegation in order for it to happen, so that it doesn't fall all on you. And then you welcome the help, especially you men out there. You welcome the help and you ask for help. And do not let your ego take over, because once your ego takes over, then you start to deny the help. And once you deny the help, you burn out. And this house that you started to build comes crashing down, all because you failed to ask for help, because you failed to allow the help to happen. This is why it is important for us to embrace collectivism, to embrace collaboration and cooperation, because we cannot all do it on our own. We're not built for it. We're not made for it as human beings. What made the Black Panthers so successful? Was it Huey P. Newton by himself? Was it Bobby Seale by himself? Was it Angela Davis by herself? Was it Assata Shakur by herself? Was it Fred Hampton by himself? No. It was what? The collective. When we talk about the Black Panthers, we talk about a collective, right? We talk about the African National Congress. You don't just talk about Nelson Mandela. Even though he's the most famous, you don't just talk about him. It is a collective. When you talked about the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, you don't just talk about Dr. King by himself. You talk about the collective and what they were able to achieve. When you talk about SNCC, you don't just talk about it by itself. When you talk about all these different groups, you don't just talk about one particular person. And even if you have a famous particular person, they were not alone in doing the things that they achieved. We have to decolonize our minds, and part of that decolonization means taking that individualistic type of mentality and tossing it to the side and being more collectivist and allowing for many hands to make the load light so that when we pick it up, it doesn't feel so heavy. I spoke with several mental health professionals who regularly treat clients for activism fatigue, and their overall advice was this: prioritize causes that genuinely inspire you. Set realistic goals for your activism and work to accept that there are certain problems you cannot fix no matter how hard you try. First tip: set goals based on compassion, not guilt or fear. If you care about fighting a social problem, it is easy to get swept up in feelings of guilt, panic, or guilt. When you take a break to rest, to care for yourself, or even to enjoy a vacation, the problem remains unfixed and looming in the back of your mind. And in many activist spaces, both in person and online, there's a great deal of pressure to remain focused on pressing, upsetting issues all the time, often to the detriment of our health. There are a lot of traumatized people in activist spaces, says Sharon Glassburn. They've experienced a lot of injustice and abuse, and they don't have the ability to walk away from it completely. So they become really emotionally dysregulated, and they can re-traumatize the people around them. I know exactly what Sharon means. I've seen this firsthand in my own activism. A few years ago, I got involved in a campaign to shut down the solitary confinement prison in southern Illinois called Tams Correctional Center. I joined up with Leslie, an activist and political organizer who had been fighting to get Tams closed for more than 10 years. Everywhere she went, Leslie carried a massive suitcase filled with letters from men who were in solitary confinement. She worked a full-time job during the day and spent 4 to 6 hours every night answering letters from these men. Every weekend was filled with meetings with politicians and activist groups fighting to close Tams. I admired her drive, but I could see that it was corrosive to Leslie's health. Eventually, her intensity took a toll on me too. One chilly Saturday in March, I came down with a cold. I made plans to spend that day with Leslie, going door to door campaigning for a political candidate she believed would help us get Tams closed. It was a bitter cold day. The sidewalks were encased in snow, and I was running a fever. I should have bailed on my plans with Leslie, but I knew that if I did, she'd think I didn't take the cause seriously. So we worked all day, barely taking time for a single break. By mid-afternoon, my cold had gotten far worse, and I was barely able to walk. Even then, I could tell Leslie expected me to keep working. It was disappointing in me for running out of energy. Leslie's activist group meetings regularly stretch late into the night. and she was constantly creating long to-do lists that overwhelmed me and her other volunteers. I quit the campaign shortly after that bitterly cold day in March because I just couldn't take it anymore. Instead of burning myself out, I wish I'd set reasonable limits on my activism and hadn't let Leslie's expectations manipulate me into overwork. Now, when I decide to fight for a cause, I ask myself a few quick gut check questions about it. 1, when I think about this activism, do I feel excited or do I feel guilty? When I think about this activism, do I feel excited or do I feel guilty? 2, if I say no to something or miss an event, do I worry that I'll be judged by the activist community? You also have to make sure that we're not ones who are being too judgy if we're activists. 3, how much time can I safely give to this cause every week, every month? Are you setting time aside for yourself to recover? 4, how will I know when I need to reduce my commitment or take a break? 5, what other steps am I taking to make the world a better place? When I reflect on these questions, I am better able to make a reasoned decision about how much work I can afford to put in. Instead of seeing every single social issue as a blazing fire I must personally snuff out, I can view activism as a regular, healthy habit like exercise. I can't do everything, but I can help chip away at big problems by doing my own small part. Take those to heart. Next tip, grieve the things you cannot change. One of the mental health professionals I interviewed about this was Xochitl Sandoval, a counselor who works with the Chicago-based therapy group Practical Audacity. A queer, transgender, indigenous person, Xochitl knows very deeply about what it is like to be impacted by justice on a day-to-day basis. One way that Z deals with it is by giving lots of space for mourning and grief. I think we don't know how to grieve as a society, Z says. I think a lot of the conversation about activist burnout is actually about grieving, about being really able and willing to just sit in this space of, this is effing awful, and there might not be anything I can do to solve this. Xochitl shares with me Z often mourns the harm that has already been done to the planet due to industrialization and climate change. Though society can take steps to reduce carbon emissions and slow the damage that's occurring, there's some harm that can never be undone. The Amazon is burning. So many animals have gone extinct because of climate change, he says. And there's always, I think, this natural impulse to make sense of it all. Like, what are the ways in which you can take action? Like, you sign some petitions? Can you commit to not using plastic? And we can talk about those steps, but let's start with the grief. Let's start with the fact that even if I cut out all plastic from my life, that doesn't take away all the plastic from the ocean. The American Psychological Association issued a massive report on climate grief for the first time in 2017, with chapters detailing how fear about the planet's future is linked to the depression and anxiety among adults and children alike. A survey from Yale, conducted in 2018, found that 62% of people say they're worried about climate change, up from around 30% back in 2015. So Xochitl and their clients are far from alone in feeling this despair. Instead of trying to ignore these hard feelings or to solve them with activist work, Xochitl recommends honoring them. It may sound very demotivating to sit and mourn loss like this, but feelings of grief can't just be brushed away. When we treat social problems as emergencies that we must fix, we delude ourselves into thinking that we can control them if we only work hard enough. Realistically, though, that just isn't the case. I can fight and make the world more just, but if my goal is fixing a decades-old problem or making it go away, I'm destined to fail and burn out. Sometimes the best way to deal with those feelings of panic and guilt is to really let them wash over us for a moment and really accept that we're not fully in control or fully responsible for it. This can be an immensely sad experience, but it can also be liberating. When we mourn the losses that can never be brought back, we come to accept the reality we're living in. This allows us to address problems realistically and sustainably. An individual cannot fix a systemic problem. It takes a systemic solution to fix a systemic problem. Meaning, in order to fix a systemic problem, you have to create a new system in order to fix the problem. Meaning, you have to do it collectively. The system that we have currently was brought about collectively by means of people who wish to gear the world in a way that facilitates greed and selfishness and strife and war. It wasn't done by one person. Therefore, it has to be done by the collective to undo it. Meaning, you will not be able to do it all on your own. This is why it must be done collectively. And you take turns, essentially, in fixing the issue. You chip away a little bit, another person chips away a little bit, another person chips away a little bit, another person chips away a little bit. And you realize that the group that you're a part of is much larger than the group that tore the world apart. All you have to do is gather everybody up together and you eat, chip away, chip away, chip away. But don't think that you have to do it all on your own. That's what needs to be done. Why do you think that they want to essentially take away our free speech, our ability to come together? Because they want us to think that we have to do it all on our own. Final tip. Make your activism small. Another way to make activism less stressful and all-consuming is to stop thinking of it as a big abstract obligation and to focus instead on the small, concrete steps you can take each day. Research from the American Psychological Association suggests that when we look at an abstract, scary problem and focus only on how massive and complex it is, we tend to feel a lot of powerlessness and grief. Conversely, when we turn our attention towards the small local steps we can take to address the problem, we feel more in control of the situation, less anxious and more motivated to keep up the fight. When you do local actions that help your community, you may not be doing something on the grand scale, but you're doing something that has the potential to grow. When you're growing a plant, is it a gigantic plant already? Or does it start off as a seed? Do you give the seed as much water as you would give it to a fully grown plant? No. It doesn't take as much. So therefore, if you start off small and then you nourish it, what happens? It germinates, it develops roots, and then it starts to grow. A plant always establishes roots first before it starts to grow and blossom. The roots are always anchored first before anything starts to show on the surface. Establish those roots. For example, I can spend my free time researching how the changing ecosystem will impact Chicago's local and indigenous plants, or attend a talk at the Botanic Garden on how to help plant and protect more native species. I can fight back against local industries development. I can fight back against local industrial development that would make climate change worse. I can vote for politicians who would take the issue seriously and donate to local indigenous-led organizations that are growing native plants and looking after the land in traditional ways. I can't stop climate change, but that doesn't mean I have to give up. I can take solace in the fact that I've helped bring life into the world. It's just like, for instance, here in Orlando, you have Real Orlando, which is Revolutionary Education Action League. They do great work, and they also have the farm that they have, right? Now, they're not doing anything on some massive grand worldwide scale, not even countrywide, not even statewide. It's more community centered. But what are they doing? They're doing their part into helping make the world better through a sustainable way by just growing food. Could you be doing that as well? Those of us at the Orlando chapter of RBN, we're not going to grow to be some huge, massive statewide organization. I mean, if we do, great. But the goal is to stay small so that we can help communities and influence other groups to also pop up so that we can collectively change things. We don't want to burn ourselves out. We want to stay and smolder for a long period of time. Just because you have coals, hot coals that smolder and it doesn't have some big, huge flash in the pan fire, the flash in the pan fire, it may be big, but it's only temporary. But you don't want to be so cold that you don't really feel anything. We want to be just hot enough that we smolder for a long period of time. And that's basically how you have to do it. Even if you keep yourself small, you're still doing the work. It took years for Kim and their partner Caleb to plan their wedding. Kim was always too busy with things like managing their illness, raising their daughter, and engaging in their daily activism. Caleb was always too busy with his full-time job and keeping the house relatively clean and organized. It's been really hard for them to find the time and energy to move to the next stage of their lives. Recently, though, I opened up Instagram and was greeted with a photo of Kim in their wedding dress, smiling and sitting in a hotel bed with their daughter, Sophie, at their side. Normally, when I hear from Kim, I hear all about how exhausted their day is and how difficult everything in their life has been. So seeing them happy and relaxed was really a really welcome sight. I teared up and then eagerly hopped over to Kim's profile so I could look at all their other beautiful, joyful wedding photos that have been uploaded. I know Kim probably still feels bad about having taken time away from their activism in order to plan this wedding. But as their friend, I'm so happy they did. That's it for chapter 7. The next one we're going to be doing is the conclusion. Compassion kills the laziness lie. I cannot wait. I am almost done. Oh my gosh. Woo, this is going to be interesting. Oh my gosh. I cannot believe I'm almost done with this book. But it's been so refreshing to read this. And so I hope those of you who are either getting into activism are taking this to heart, or if you are an activist, I hope this has been a great lesson for you. It's been a wonderful lesson for me to take to heart. Basically, in a nutshell, realize your limitations. You are a human, not a robot. Yes, the capitalist system wants you to think that you're a robot and wants you to judge yourself based on just your productivity, but you are not. You are a human being with limitations. You need rest. You need relaxation. You need leisure. You need these things. It is necessary so that you can keep going to do the activism, to do the organizing, to do the work on the ground. You are not a robot. I want you to listen to me now. Do not let them think that they can tell you who you are. You know who you are. Do not let them push you into thinking that you are a robot. Keep your humanity alive. I think that's one of the best things that we can constantly remember. Keep your humanity alive. So, that being said, go ahead and like the stream. Thank you so very much. Also, big shout out to the patrons on Patreon and on Coffee. Without you guys, I would not be able to do this work, and anybody that sends me mutual aid through PayPal. So thank you so very much to everyone. And if you'd like to support the channel, you can support via Patreon or PayPal. Yes, my channel is demonetized. So it's deeply appreciated. If you guys would like to, here are the tiers so that you can support the channel. Here we go. We have JB members, Solidarity, Comrades, Jaybefaunters, Super Jaybefaunters, Super Duper Jaybefaunters, and Mega Jaybefaunters. Thank you so much. Now, just to let you guys know, I will be going into further reading of The Will to Change by Bell Hooks, as well as A Water in the Spirit. So we'll continuing the reading of that. And yeah, so I think I already know what my next book is going to be. I cannot wait to read. Oh, yeah. I know exactly what I'm going to read next. So I'm going to get into that. And so, yes, I am very grateful for this book because it is really putting me that it's like Dr. Price is like grabbing me by my shoulders and saying, hey, relax. Focus on what you can focus on. Do what you need to do. And once you start to feel the fatigue, stop. Relax. Regain your energy. Then get your ass back out there. Fight a little bit more. Chip away a little bit more. Once you start to feel a little tired, relax. Regain your energy. There will be other people that's going to be doing it too. Other people are going to be out there too. So even if you stop, there's other people doing it. It's like firefighters trying to take out a forest fire. The first shift of firefighters, they're already starting, but then the second shift comes in with their hoses, and then they're standing next to you. That's your cue to stop, go rest, eat, have your leisure while they're doing the fighting. And then another shift will come in, and another shift, and another shift. And then finally you come back in and you keep the fighting going. You got to think about it like that. Don't let it be all on your shoulders. Leaving the world better than you found it is a collective attempt. It is a collective goal. Think about it like that. Water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Take your time out to smoke them if you got them, drink them if you got them. If you ain't got them, then watch something funny, because laughter and joy is revolutionary, or read something, because reading is fundamental. Thank you so very much to everybody for tuning in, and forehead kisses. Take some time to chill out. I know I will. And then get back out there. Thank you so very much for watching my channel, and I deeply appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you wish to support the channel further, so I can keep bringing you content that is educational and informative, you can become a patron on patreon.com/Jaybefaunt. You can find that link in the pinned comment or in the description below. No matter what you give, you'll be supporting independent media and education that helps make the world better. Thank you so much, and you can watch more of my content here. Forehead kisses, and have a beautiful day.